Hello, you Mayhem Makers. I'm Mindy with Quilting Mayhem, and today I wanted to show you a new technique that I learned when I was in QuiltCon back in February. I saw a lot of quilts that were kind of improv with this really tiny piecing, and so I'm calling it kind of a sliver piecing, I believe is the term they're using. And since then, I have seen it featured in like the Bernina Wheel Sew blog. I've seen other images of artwork that are very similar in style with a really tiny piecing or small pieces inside of it. So I have a couple of things that like I've created, and this is very improv, and it's this really tiny, 1/8 piece of fabric, right? So very cool, and I'm kind of on an improv journey right now. I'm starting to learn a lot of new improv things because I'm a very traditional quilter in my training, because of the 30 years of my quilting, most of it has been your traditional piecing or foundation paper piecing or English paper piecing, but improv has been the one I haven't quite really gotten into yet. But so this is kind of a sample of trying to use that small slivers of fabric and just randomly putting stuff in. And this is kind of a work in progress, so I'm not leaving a large chunk in there, but I could. But I just thought I'd show you how to do it, or at least the technique I learned through the Bernina Wheel Sew blog. And it's really fairly simple because as far as tools wise, it just recommends the add a 3/8 ruler. So instead of like there's an add a quarter, add an eighth, all of that, this is the add a 3/8. So this ruler, this is lovely blue. And the lip on it, this is 3/8 inch wide. And the key to that is that it's going to give you your 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then you'll have that 1/8 left in there for your sliver. And I'm just using, I grabbed, I love these. This is just a Kona charm pack of Kona solids in, these kind of lovely blues and greens. And I guess there's some kind of almost mushroom, I guess we'll call colors in there. Love it. And so I'm just kind of using this because this will help me stay within my palette that I want to do as I'm just trying to do these improv throw fabrics together. So I am going to change this around so you can see how this goes in just a minute. But really, to start with, you can just take 2 fabrics, and they can be of any size. I have kind of a variety of chunks here. Or if I start with 2 charms, you can start with 2 5-inch squares, because you're just going to kind of keep chopping and adding as you feel. Because a lot of like this piece was just how wide did I want the next color? How much of that color did I want to show? And I will explain that. So to start out with, I am just going to take 2 fabrics. I'm going to sew them together with a regular 1/4 inch seam. 1/4 inch foot is all you need on your machine. Nothing fancy, no different stitch lengths or that kind of stuff. Oh, and the only other thing I am going to be using along with this project is this new magic spray. So this is a new one that we've brought in. It is very stiff compared to like our best press and our flatter, which I still love. It still is in my spray bottle. It still has a home here. But this one for small pieces is really good because you're going to get it a little bit stiffer than your normal starch spray, so that as you're trying to do those small seams, they're not wiggling out of the way or warping on you. That you'll have a nice flat straight seam to be working with in such small pieces. So I am going to be using the magic spray. It is magical today. All right, so I'm going to go make my seam, and then we're going to come over to the table and I'll show you what's going on. All right, so we have just sewn our 2 pieces together, and then the add a 3/8. So it has your 3/8 lip on there. So there is a little bit of edge if you can see it. And we're laying it right on top of that seam. So we now have 3/8 inch from your seam. We're going to cut that piece off. Might be time to change the blade. All right, so now we have just this really tiny piece, right? Then what you'll do is take your next fabric, line it up to that edge, sew a 1/4 inch seam. So I'll do that and we'll be right back. Okay, so this is how much got chopped off of the chunk, and we have this really tiny piece, right? So there's your sliver. Now you could keep just stacking up slivers. To me, I feel like that might get a little bulky or too much. So what's the fun part of improv is you can just pick how big you want the separation between the next color. And you could do angles and those kinds of things, but because I'm just kind of working with charm squares, it's a little easier if I try to stay fairly straight, but I can do a little bit of an angle and still get it to all work out, because in the end, I get to trim it down to whatever size I want. So, you know, like this piece where I started going, I can trim it down to just a little square if I want, or a long rectangle, but I'm going to trim and even it all up in the end. So it doesn't matter if I start going different angles, or like this guy where, you know, originally I started out with this piece where I did my sliver and I just chopped it in half and then sewed one in and put those two pieces back together. And it made kind of that look. So, you know, I can just go chop off that chunk, leave that size, and then I just add in another fabric. See, this one's even smaller. So, you know, do I make that choice because this one's had a piece chopped off, or do I want the full length? I want the full length. So I'll take this piece, line it up, sew it, and I'll be right back. All right, so we're at this phase. Now, keep in mind, one thing to note is, if you know me, generally I press my seams open, but for this, because we're working in such small chunks and we want the edge of this ruler to nest up really nice next to that, I am pressing kind of away from the cutting. So the fabric's going to the left, away from where I'm cutting. Now, I can either go back and do another little sliver, which we'll do, just so you can see what it starts to look like. So, lip of this ruler right up on that seam. It sits nice and tight when you're pressing away because you've made a little bit bulky over here, but that's okay because we're staying away from this tinier seam. Chop that off. Okay, so there's our 3/8. Find another fabric that we like. We'll just grab. This is kind of the fun part of improv. I'm just randomly grabbing from this stack and throwing them in. And whatever happens, happens, because that palette was pre-chosen. So you know they all go together. Now I'm going to go do the 1/4 inch seam. And there's your next little sliver. See, this is fun. I'm really loving how this goes. So you just kind of keep going. Like, I potentially will now work my angle back to the left, just so this strip at least doesn't start to kind of go downhill. I want it to still stay kind of a rectangle, so in the end I have a decent rectangular piece to work with. So, but I could go out here if I wanted bigger. I could go tinier. I mean, really, you can go crazy. You can chop across here if you want and start adding in. It's all how you want it. But I think actually do a little bit smaller piece. Just chop that off. And then once again. Now, since I showed the magic spray, what I would be doing is starching these pieces prior to use, so they'd be nice and firm as we go. So I'm going to show you a sample, so we see how loosey-goosey it is, which we love. And any of you that ask, don't pre-wash. These become a hot mess if you try to pre-wash these. It's just not needed, all right? So let me go starch it. All right, this is just one spray. Notice it's already a little firmer than, say, here, let's get a real square from the pile. So we have this guy. Notice how this, you can see where my fingers are, it bends. This one definitely is starting to hold some shape. So this is just one spray of the magic spray. So it's pretty good. It does a nice crisp job. So once again, just line up those edges, do a 1/4 inch seam. And this is how we're starting it to look. There's your back side, just pressing away. Ignore the dog making noise in the background. And I'm going to do another sliver again. So once again, 3/8 right up on that seam. Grab another piece. And we're going to keep going. All right. And this gets really addictive. So then you might ask, well, can you do 2 slivers in a row? Well, let's see. So sliver number 1. We're going to come do another cut. So we have our 3/8 again. Find another fabric. And we're going to add it on. So of course the answer is yes. You can add as many little tiny slivers as you want. Those seams are just going to kind of start stacking on each other though, so it does give you a little more bulk the more of those slivers that you put next to each other. So for me, I'll just give this some breathing room, and I'm just going to keep kind of moving onward. Actually, maybe I'll do another kind of inside angle. Why not? It'll give it kind of maybe a wave effect in the end if I kind of make my angles go kind of one way and then the other. Who knows? But that's just all this really is. All right, so you can keep going, playing, adding fabrics. I mean, it's kind of fun because you just grab. Trust me, it's okay. It will be okay in the end. Especially if you've picked a charm pack palette that it's pre-made to go together. So you can kind of let that worry go of like, well, what if the fabric doesn't go with? Let all those go. Just pull fabrics, throw them together, chop it up, have fun. Because this is getting addicting. I'm really kind of loving this. So hopefully this inspired you maybe to try it. You could even do like a small project. You don't need to do a quilt with a bunch of this. You could do a bag, table runner, table topper. It's something small. Add it as an accent to a garment, any of that kind of stuff. Like just play and have fun, because this is just, I don't know why. I'm starting to love kind of that random chop and put it back together. It's kind of fun. So hope you have a lovely day. Keep on stitching.